What's happening, church? Man, I gotta be honest. I'm super pumped to be here. I haven't been this excited about a message and a message series in a really long time. Not saying that all series aren't created equal, and I think this one's just going to be really awesome. Now, Stupid Things Christians Say is the title of the series, if you didn't know that. And I didn't know whether to be honored that I got asked to go first, or offended if when they're coming up with it, they're like, man, you know who would be who says stupid things all the time? Pastor Ryan. We'll get him. He'll go first, right? Seriously. All right, hey, there we go. Seriously, though, man, it is going to be an incredible series because I think as Christians, I believe as Christians, we think it makes us immune to saying stupid things, but I actually believe it's quite the opposite. That being a Christian sort of sets you up, and stay with me here, sets you up to say stupid things, right? Because as Christians, if you're not a Christian today, that's okay, man. We are so excited that you are with us today, but I'm just talking to the Christians, so the non-Christians, you're off the hook. Listen, us Christians, we believe in some crazy stuff, really crazy stuff. Nobody, raising people from the dead, that's crazy, all right? Raising yourself from the dead as Jesus did, that's crazy. But what happens is our human logical side comes in and says, well, I believe this because I'm a Christian and I read this but man, if I was God, I wouldn't do it like that. Or if man, that doesn't make it, I don't know if that makes any sense. What God probably meant is something along these lines. And I don't know if that happens to you, but it happens to me all the time when I read throughout the Bible, and I'm like, it doesn't make sense. And then what you do is you end up believing these sort of cultural lies that are made up about God. And when you believe those lies, then what happens is you say stupid things. And here's why it matters. What you believe and subsequently what you say actually matters. Isn't that crazy? It actually matters. And here's why. If you and I are the hands and feet of God on this planet, what we say to the people who aren't in here matters. Right? Come on. And so today what I want to do is sort of examine one of these cultural lies, and that's what the whole sermon series is about. But here's my hope, okay? Here's my hope. If this is your first time, or maybe you've been coming for a while, listen, here's my hope. That you don't get offended that maybe you think this, or you've thought this, or you believe this about anything in the sermon series. My hope is this, is that you and I would come to a better understanding of what God wants for our lives because we've cleared up some cultural misconceptions about who God is and what he does and why he wants us to be a part of his plan. Amen? So today we're going to talk about what I believe is the most common, biggest misconception out of them all. And so I'll give you a little intro and we'll get right into it. I have an old pastor friend, Pastor Tom. Pastor Tom, you're awesome, okay, down at Centerpoint Church. And he was sort of like a father figure for me, which meant he spoke a lot of truth and maybe not as much grace as I had hoped, when I was working for him and working with him. A lot of truth, and he's an incredible preacher and an incredible man. And he used to say something that I didn't love, but it's true. And so this is what he said all the time. He said, listen, either you are in a rough season of your life, a difficult season in your life, you are about to go into a difficult season of your life, or you are just coming out of a difficult season of your life. How many of you feel like you fall into one of those categories? Amen. And listen, it doesn't have to warm your heart to be true, but it's true. Chances are, if you're alive long enough, you're going to fall into one of those categories. And I don't know about you, but it feels like as soon as my life is spiraling down and things are getting worse, it's very easy for me to all of a sudden be like, man, it's just too much for me to handle, right? How fast does it go from 0 to 100, right? And when you're in that spot, I don't know about you, but man, it never fails that when I am in that spot and I am spiraling down, some Christian just comes along with some annoying Christian advice, right? Oh, it's okay. God will never give you more than you can handle. Like, oh, no, you don't have to worry, don't do any of that, no, because God will never give you more than you can handle. We need to embrace the reality right here, right now, that God didn't say that. And if God didn't say that, then it's awfully, to use some good branding, it's awfully stupid for us to say it if God didn't say it. Because here's the truth. The opposite is actually true. And so let's talk about that today. Now, I believe that this, God wouldn't give us more than we can handle, comes from a misquoting of a very powerful scripture in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. And in the 13th verse, you have Paul talking to the Corinthians, and what he's talking to them about is this idea of temptation. And so this is what he says. He says to the church, God is faithful. Man, we could just stop there and do a sermon series for the year, right? But he continues, and so we'll continue. God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you're tempted, he will also provide a way out. So you see the similarities. What it doesn't say is that God's not going to give you more than you can handle. What it says is that when you are tempted, I'm going to give you a way out. And the way out is me, is what God says. But there, I believe that is where the sort of misquoting comes, because if you survey the Bible, if you go through all the stories in the Bible, man, the Bible is chock full of people getting more than they can handle, right? You got Gideon in Judges, who's the weakest. He's supposed to lead a couple hundred people and conquer a couple thousand people. Like, you have Moses, right? Moses, I grew up on Charlton Heston Moses, okay? You got Moses, and like, who can't talk, who can't lead his people. He's a hot mess, and he's got 1 million people going on. And then you have Esther, who's just afraid, terrified. Who's ever been terrified? Yeah, terrified about real life things, not terrified that you're gonna get the ticket because the cop pulled out behind you, terrified, right? And then we have King David. I mean, a man after God's own heart. But when sin finally caught up with King David, he said this. He said, listen, my guilt has overwhelmed me like a burden too heavy to bear. I'm exhausted and completely crushed. My groans come from an anguished heart. Sound familiar? Sound like he might have a little bit more than he can handle. Even Jesus, talking in the New Testament in Mark's gospel, says, listen, Jesus is not looking forward like I'm excited, but looking forward to what he's about to endure on the cross. I mean, just the worst of the worst. And this is what it says. Jesus began to be deeply distressed and troubled. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. He's so physically overwhelmed with what's about to happen in his life that he is actually sweating blood. Yet we say God will never give you more than you can handle. In fact, it's quite the opposite. For those of you who came in today who don't feel like you have what it takes, that it's just weighing you down, that things are to the point, there's this pressure that is just upon you. God, you're saying, God, why are you doing this to me? God, why are you doing this to me? I want to give you 2 very good reasons of why God would give you more than you can handle. And the first is this, so that we would depend on his presence. So that we would depend on his presence. You get this and you don't even know that you get this. Okay, listen, how many of you are just like me, where when things are going right, we just sort of forget about God, right? It's not like you forgot about God, because there's probably people in this room who things are going well for you right now, and you're here and you're still worshiping, but there's no urgency for God, right? You know what I'm saying? Like God, thank you for getting me to this place, and things are going really well. I really appreciate it. If you could just hang out in the corner and make sure things stay that way, that'd be great. I'm gonna be over here doing me. But oh, how we remember him when things go bad, right? Oh my goodness, when things go terribly bad. God, what are you doing? God, why would you allow this to happen? God, I need you, I need you, I need you. Now, I was on a flight a couple years ago from MCO, that's Orlando International, for all you Central Floridians, and I was heading out to San Diego for a student pastor conference, because I used to be a student pastor. And I'm going to be honest with you, when I travel or when I'm in close quarters with people I don't know, man, I'm the hoodie, earphones guy. I'm out, I won't bother you, you don't bother me. And one of the reasons why I'm like that is because inevitably what the conversation turns to is, hey, what do you do for a living? And I'm going to be honest with you, I feel like lying sometimes. Because when I tell them that I'm Pastor Ryan, when I'm a pastor, one of two things happen, and they're both equally awkward. The first is this. I think this might even be better than the second. The first is this. The question comes, and I respond accordingly, and they go, oh, that's nice. And they go right down to whatever they're doing, and they're like, don't look at me, and anytime they like mess up, they like look over at you, and it's super awkward. The other, perhaps even worse, right? What happens is like somebody will sit down in the chair and they'll dialogue, and the question will come up, and I'll respond accordingly, and they go from 0 to 100. It's like, oh wait, you're a pastor? Oh, I am preordained to sit next to a man of the cloth on this flight, and man, glory be to God, blessed be. And I'm like, all of a sudden I turn into who is this person, right? And they're like, in a moment we're going to take off, and we're going to fly on wings like eagles, and we will not grow weary, because I was preordained to sit next to a pastor. And I'm like, what happened to you? You were normal 2 minutes ago. It happens, I promise, okay? Trust me on that. And so I'm on a flight from Orlando to San Diego, and the lady sits down, and I got, headphones in and stuff like that. It's going to be a 5.5-hour flight. I'm just trying to be me, and she wants to talk. And she's super nice, and she's a super nice lady, and she's like, hey, and the conversation, of course, goes to, what do you do for a living? And I say, oh, I'm a pastor. And she goes, oh, that's fine. She threw me a curveball. She goes, oh, that's fine. I go, okay. She goes, as long as you remember two things. I'm not a Christian, and you're not going to convert me on this flight. So then I'm like, okay, this is going to be awkward for 5.5 hours. Turns out the lady was super nice. We chatted. We had some really good rapport going. But somewhere over Texas, Oklahoma, as we traversed the country, we experienced, and I feel like every pastor has some sort of story like this, we experienced turbulence from not heaven, okay? Y'all ever seen this kind of turbulence? You're in your seat, you're just repenting for sins you don't even know you did, but you're just in case this goes down, I'm ready, right? You're just asking for forgiveness, right? Things were coming out of the ceiling, the doors were opening, bags were falling, the lights are flickering, that kind of turbulence. And this goes on for about 15 minutes. Well, I had built up a rapport with this lady, and she was pretty sarcastic, so I'm pretty sarcastic. I nudged over, and I go, hey, how do you feel about God now? Now, I have to tell you, up until this point, because she wasn't a Christian, she didn't have a filter. And man, she was putting together curse words. If cursing was a gift from the Spirit, she had that gift. She was putting together combinations that I had never heard before, right? There were words, and I'm pretty versed, and there were words that I feel bad thinking about right now because of where we are. Okay, so I nudge her, I say, hey, how do you feel about God? And she goes, bleep you and your bleeping God. And then every 2 seconds, bleep, bleep, oh, I'm sorry, Pastor, and then bleep, bleep, bleep. And this goes on for 15 minutes, goes on for another 10, 15 minutes. It's starting to get real. Things are falling, the lights are out, it's the middle of the day, so it's just creepy. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be a good pastor. I'm going to pray. And so I kind of put my head down, and I start to pray, and I feel this little tap on my shoulder. And she goes, leaned in, and it's like, I don't believe in your bleeping God, but if you can bleep and pray for me too, that'd be great. I'm like, got her, right? We're in, right? But isn't it amazing how when things are going bad, all that to say, when things are going bad, you get drawn into the presence of God, even if you don't even know it. And this is what happened with this lady. And so perhaps God would give you more than you could handle so that you would depend on his presence. Now, this is really obvious when it comes to Jonah. Now, Jonah, you don't have to be a Christian to know Jonah. Jonah, basically God says, Jonah, hey, I want you to go preach to the Ninevites. And Jonah's like, that's a hard task, God. I'm not going to do that. Those guys don't like me. I don't like them. And I'm good. And so, much like you and I do, he rebels. Now, through a weird series of events, Jonah ends up on a boat and very famously is thrown from said boat, and then he is swallowed by a big fish. But this is what Jonah says. We pick it up in Jonah chapter 2. Check this out. He says, in my distress, I called to the Lord, and he answered me. Notice what Jonah didn't say. He didn't say, in my successes. No, he said, in my distress. And isn't it amazing when we are distressed, how much more we crave the presence of God, right? And he says, listen, when my life was ebbing away, in verse 7, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to you. So here's my challenge for some of you today. You are in a storm right now, and you're starting to wonder whether God's really there. You're starting to wonder whether God is really doing his thing in your life, right? Your life is not going the way you expected it to go, and you're like, what's happening, God? Why is this happening? God, if you were with me, this would not happen. God, if you were with me, if you were good, man, I don't understand why God would allow bad things to happen to me. Man, I've been doing the things you asked me to do, God, and maybe you're praying for that one thing, right? God, can't you just help me with that one thing? But I came to tell somebody today, do not let the presence of a storm cause you to doubt the presence of God. Do not let the presence of a storm in your life cause you to doubt the presence of God. Because listen, he will never leave you, nor will he forsake you. Why would God allow you to experience more than you can handle? Sometimes to teach you to depend on him, to draw you close to him. In my distress, I remembered him, he said. And Lord David said this, the Lord is near to all who call on him, just like Jonah did, to all who call on him in truth. Some of you right now are in the presence of a storm, and what it is to force you to remember God and to seek him. And when you seek him, oh, it's so good. He's going to reveal himself to you. You're going to draw near. When you draw near to him, he's going to draw near to you. It's how it's worked. Man, I tell you what, I'm convinced that I'm not going to joke. I'm convinced that God allowed me to get to a place when it came to depression, allowed me to get to a place when it came to suicidal thoughts, allowed me to get to a place where I had more than I could handle so that I would just simply recognize that his call on my life, that God used that time in my life just to draw me closer, just to reach, he forced me to reach a place of desperation so that I would remember his goodness. Because life is like that sometimes. Right? You can be in the mountaintop and you can be in the valley and the mountaintop. I tell you what, I know we can experience God in the mountaintop. I know we can. But I best experience him in the valley. I best experience him in the valley. I'm most aware of his goodness in the valley, right? Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Why? Why? Because thou art with me. Because thou art with me. Oh, it's best. I best experience his goodness in the valley. And I can tell you with sincerity, I would rather be in the valley with Jesus than on the mountaintop without him. I would rather be in the valley. I would rather be in the valley of life, the worst of the worst, and remember his goodness and remember his presence than be on the mountaintop and unaware of what he's done for me. And some of you have come here today and you are hurting in ways that I can't even understand. You are in a storm in your life and you're wondering why God has given you more than you can handle, and it's so that you'll depend on him. Because he will never leave you, nor will he forsake you. And the second reason is to teach you to experience his power, not yours. His power, not yours. See, many of you are going through life on your own power, right? Like, parents, you have no idea how good you have it right now when it comes to road trips compared to like my parents' generation, okay? Listen, parents, now you got iPads, you got iPhones, you got the Google machine, you got like Nintendo Switches, Nintendo DS's, Game Boys for my throwback people. Like, you got all of this to keep your kids occupied. We don't have that, or we didn't have that when I was a kid, right? Like, when I was growing up, man, the only thing that kept you occupied was occupying yourself with your siblings, which inevitably got your parents really ticked off, right? And you're on a long enough road trip, they would just reach back and they would grab your thigh, and they would cripple your leg until Tuesday. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So my dad figured out somewhere along the line, I was probably 6 or 7 years old, because I vividly remember this. And he says, listen, he's like, I got a game. I got a game for you. And I'm like, okay. He goes, I bet you can't hold this handkerchief out this window all the way to grandma's house. 3 hours. Now, guys, I didn't hear anything after I bet you, okay? Listen, when the words I bet you can't say that to a guy, okay? We're stupid. I'm starting to realize why I got asked to go first, okay? Listen, all I heard was I bet you, and this is so crazy. There was no payoff. It's not like I bet you $5. It's not like I bet you you can stay up 30 more minutes. I'm like, oh, I can't? I can. Give me the handkerchief. And so I snatched that thing out, and I'm holding it out the window 3 hours. And I'm just going, and I'm just holding on to that handkerchief, and then I'm like, oh, you didn't see that one coming. I switched it up. I went the other hand, and my dad's watching the rearview mirror like, and I'm just holding it out there, and then I like two hands, and I'm just holding it out there, and like we're going 60, 70 miles an hour down the highway, and all of a sudden, like, we get to grandma's house, and I'm like, woo! I throw the handkerchief out the window, and I'm like, I won! I'm like, woo! Do a happy dance. And my dad's like, yep, you won. It wasn't for like 2 decades later when I had my own kid that I was like, I didn't win. Like had this realization in the car one time, like going to Disney, like I didn't win. No, man, it was quite the opposite. Dad just wanted me occupied. Dad just wanted me like quiet. All that to say is, man, I'm sitting there holding that handkerchief with everything I got, and that's the exact same picture of some of you in your life. Right, you're holding on to that handkerchief. You're holding on to it. And then you got your two hands. You're like, I can see grandma's house. I'm just going to make it. I just got to get through this thing. Because, see, you're programmed to believe the lie that God's never going to give you more than you can handle. And so well, God's not going to give me more than I can handle, then I should be able to handle this and hold on and stuff like that. You are not programmed to have all the power. You are not programmed to have all the power. It is not true. You were given more than you can handle so that you could rely on His power and not your power. And guys, this isn't a new thing. This isn't a new thing at all. This is something that people have suffered through for all of history. We talk about Paul, the same Paul who was writing to Corinthians, and he's writing, and he talks about this thorn in his side that has plagued his life, and he just wanted it to go away, right? And you might be asking, well, what was the thorn? We don't really know. We think it might have been, scholars have been arguing about this for a long time. It might have been his failing eyesight. Imagine having failing eyesight in the Middle East and Mediterranean basin and trying to write things and travel on ships and stuff like that. That'd be pretty rough. It might be a metaphor for something. We're not really sure. But all we know is that Paul pleaded with God. It says on 3 separate occasions just to take the thorn away. And when you read 3, you're like, oh, well, I could pray 3 times right now. That's not a big deal. No. We're talking about 3 seasons of life where Paul is probably fasting. He probably has his other churches like praying for him. Like you're talking like, man, 3 seasons of life where God says no. As he pleads with them. He's begging them. Maybe some of you have been there. Maybe some of you are here right now. And from my very human perspective, if somebody's going to get healed, it's probably Paul, right? I mean, like in a very human, like he deserves this for that, and so on and so forth. That's not Christian. That's just my human opinion. Like God's probably going to heal him, but He doesn't. And what God says to Paul basically is, and this is for you today. Like, if you're going to walk long enough in this sin-filled world with God, you're going to have a thorn. You'd be fortunate if it's only one. You're going to have a thorn. There is something that's just not going to go away. And you are going to ask God to remove it. God, will you please just answer this one prayer? God, can you please just help me with the depression? God, can you please just heal my kid? God, can you please just take this financial burden away? Can you please just fix this marriage? And you know He can do it. You know He can, but He doesn't. And you start to think, why would God allow this to happen? Why would God allow me to have more than I can handle? And that's exactly where Paul is when we pick up this story. But God said something to Paul that's so powerful that it ministers to me on such a deep level, and I hope it does for you too. Paul says, why don't you fix this? And this is the reply. But he said to me, this is God replying to Paul, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. My grace, Paul, my grace is all that you need. Paul, my grace is sufficient for you because my power is made perfect in your weakness, in your weakness. And Paul kind of like submits to that. He says, okay, if that's where you're going to go, God, fine, that's okay. And then he starts talking crazy talk. Paul starts talking crazy talk. This is what he says. He goes, fine, if that's how it's going to be, God, therefore, Paul, you crazy, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me. Wait, you're going to boast about it? You're going to be excited about it? And Paul says, yeah, I'm going to be excited about my weaknesses. And this is why. For Christ's sake. This is why. For Christ's sake. Not for Ryan's sake. Not for Paul's sake. Not for Daryl's sake. Not for Monica's sake. Not for Van's sake. No. For Christ's sake. I delight in my weaknesses. I delight in the insults. I delight in the persecutions. I delight in the difficulties. He says, I delight in the weaknesses. Thank God that I am weak. Thank God that I am weak. I delight in the insults. I am so excited that those people are insulting me. I am so excited that I have the hardships. I am so excited that this happened to me. This is coming from a man who's been shipwrecked, beaten, whipped, left for dead, snake bitten, and that's the only ones we know about. I delight in my weaknesses. I delight in the persecutions. I delight in the oppositions. I delight in the difficulties. Why? Why? For when I am weak, then I am strong. Say it. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Come on, say it like you mean it. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Listen, oh, do I know how this to be true when it comes to ministry? Oh, do I know how this to be true when it comes to speaking up here? I did a survey when I was planning for this message. I kind of looked over the last year, and I looked at all the weeks, and I said, I'm just going to be honest with you. There's only about 5 or 6 weeks that I could find where I wasn't in this building doing ministry at least 6 or 7 days a week. And that's not to be like, oh, look at me, like I'm so awesome. Every single staff member here could say the same thing. There's a lot of team members, incredible team members that give of their time that could say the exact same things. But I want to be completely transparent with you today. There's sometimes that I don't feel like doing it. Ministry's tough. There's sometimes, man, when I'm on day 27 in a row, I don't feel like getting up and teaching. There's sometimes when I get into an argument with my wife on the Friday and it just goes through Saturday and then Sunday and I'm supposed to get up on Sunday morning and talk about community and marriages and it takes a village. I don't want to get up and talk about those things. I know it's crazy, right? Like how could they ever say that? But in those moments when I'm weak and when my words are gone and I'm exhausted and I'm tired, that's when God's power works best. I take a step very symbolically whenever I'm going to preach or whatever I'm going to talk in front of a couple people or a couple hundred people. I take this step, and I learned this from a pastor, Craig Rochelle, many years ago at a preaching conference. He takes this step forward. And what it symbolically means is before he's about to go preach or go teach or talk to some people, he is stepping out of his power and into God's power. Out of his power and into God's power. And see, here's why I do this in my head. I'm sailing, I'm not rowing, right? A lot of you are rowing. You get it? You're rowing, and you're like, man, I'm rowing. I got to get to where I'm going. I see what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm rowing, and man, this wind is a little intense, or this wave's a little bit intense, and I'm rowing, and I'm getting where I'm supposed to be. Well, I'm not really getting where I'm supposed to be going, but I feel like because I'm supposed to do this under my own power, because God would never give me more than I can handle, and so I'm going to go there, and I'm just going to row and row and row and row. But I've been in ministry long enough and lived long enough to know I'm just going to put up the sail. Let the wind of the Spirit take me. You take me where you want me to go. I can't do it on my own. I can't do this on my own. You see, it's at that point when I can't do it anymore because, man, your muscles, you get tired, man. You can't row that long. That he gets it done despite my weaknesses, despite my shortcomings, despite the fact that I'm exhausted. Some of you are hurting today, and I want you to know that you are going to experience God more in the valley than you have ever experienced him on the mountaintop. Whatever you're going through right now, you are going to experience God more in the valley because you have reached a place of desperation, and that's right where God wants you. You see, God knows what's best for you. He created you. He knows what's best for you, and what's best for you is more of him. And a lot of times when things are going well, in my successes, I remember, no. In my distress, I remembered. You see, God's going to give you more than you can handle when he asks you to step out and do something that you weren't ready for. It's true. You're going to be a foster parent? God's going to give you more than you can handle. You're going to try to raise teenagers? You're going to have more than you can handle, right? You're going to be a man married to a woman? You're going to have more than you can handle. You're going to be a woman married to a man. You are going to have more than you can handle. You're going to be single. You're going to be a single adult and you're going to try to be a Christian at the same time. You are going to have more than you can handle. You're going to be in a relationship with anybody. You are going to have more than you can handle. You're going to be invested in ministry. You are going to have more than you can handle. But instead of saying, I got to be strong, I just got to get there, God is trying to get me where, no. You're going to say, I get to be weak. I get to be desperate. I get to be broken. Because it forces you to be dependent on Him. You were not created to do it yourself. You weren't. For when I am weak, His strength is made perfect through me. Let's stand to our feet as we close out today. So here's what we're going to do. You've all seen this. You go to a movie, right? And when they surrender, what do? They go, come out with your hands up, right? When somebody's surrendering over, when they have given up, when they can't, when there's no end in sight, like you just don't know what you're going to do, man, you come out with your hands up. So here's what we're going to do. In a moment, I'm going to pray. And I'm going to ask you, hey, if you are one of those people that is going into a storm, or you are currently in a storm, or you've just come out of a storm, that should be all of you, just in case anyone's counting, that you would raise your hands, and you would just simply accept the reality that God is going to give you more than you can handle, because it's going to push you into His presence. It's going to push you to experience His power, not yours anymore. Because for when you are weak, for when I am weak, when Pastor Ryan is weak, and it is way too often for my liking, I get pushed into His presence. And I love it because I experience Him more in the valley than I do in the mountaintop. So everybody raise your hands and surrender. It's not an act of surrender like, oh, woe is me. No, I realize that there is a creator in my heart. There's a power that raised Jesus from the dead that resides in me. And so I get to be a part of that. I get to tap into that power. If I would just simply raise my hands and surrender, acknowledge the fact that God didn't say He wasn't going to give you more than you can handle. He's going to give you so much more than you can handle. God, we surrender to You. We are hurting people, God. We have been given more than we can handle, and it's not by accident. And God, we are praying and trusting and knowing that there are hurts in here that we have been going through that You are going to heal and that You are going to take care of. But you know what? We are going to trust that if You don't, it wasn't by accident. It's so that we would experience Your presence and experience Your power in ways that we could never imagine, that are beyond our human abilities to comprehend. God, I thank You. I thank You. I thank You. I thank You for the distresses and the insults and the opposition. I thank You for the difficulties. And I thank You most of all for Your love and Your grace that sets us free. Oh God, how I thank You for Your grace. And thank You most of all for sending Your Son Jesus to die on a cross for us, so that whether the pain ends here or not, it's going to end in heaven when we get to spend eternity with You. And so God, I thank You. I thank You for getting to come into this place today and worship You with my surrender. It's in His name we pray. Amen. You guys have a great week. We'll see you back here for Stupid Things Christians Say.